Yeah, so as long as the views aren't too high, I will fill up this page, which is a YouTube page hidden away, uh, you know, for a month or so, and kind of cover some topics, leave it at that. And I have a history of removing anything that gets too many views, and I also deleted all the paranormal footage from 3 years ago when I didn't fully understand the teachings I've been receiving. And, I made a video of me deleting them all. So it's all a learning process. But I normally don't want to talk about my personal life, but there's a little follow-up here, which is totally relevant to spiritual living for people who have taken on a duty and changed their lives through a calling. Maybe they realized they were living in a hot spot, or they found one nearby. Just like Freddie Silva talks about in his, it's not really one of his main books, but he released a book called Portals. It's part of a series. It's more of like a little summary of his work that could get you into his actual books, well-researched books, like the Templar Knight book. It's got like 800 references in the back. And he says, he makes a good point. People who are awakening up and have the potential to be a spiritual leader in this ascension movement, which is happening right now. Movement meaning, lack of a better term, phenomena that's happening globally. And you can start to realize the spirit. I speak for service to others. You start doing deeds for other people. You start treating each other better. And then you can start to tap into your Aborigine-like spirit sense, where you can detect hotspots. Are hotspots necessary for people who are a shaman in a past life and are being called to connect with their guides to wake back up to be a grid worker? That's kind of a lot of, and that's who I'm talking to, and you'll naturally gravitate. Do you have to be in a hotspot to activate your spirit organ? No. Consciousness and way of life is how you activate your spirit organ. Hotspots can help you see proof of the soul and supernatural phenomenon to motivate yourself. When you're seeing phenomenon, being that we're here in 3D, when you see phenomenon, like I've talked about, I talk about things that aren't classified, but sometimes get a little far out. You're stepping out of time. If you're having what I call a contact experience, where you're dealing directly with a different density being, and you have to get used to that. You have to get used to stepping out of time, and that can happen at a hot spot, and most likely that's the easiest way to have that kind of connection, where time is actually removed and you can have an experience. So here's the follow-up, and why this little 10-minute clip is important. Is I was mentioning, I'll attach this to the last one, about me making a mistake, getting an argument with a neighbor. It's really the only place where I still fall victim to little temper issues, is if I feel violated right where I live. This involved a seasonal scent coming through the vent, and I already mentioned that. So here's the follow-up. What I did was I immediately identified that I was in the wrong. We both got cited. I started giving this neighbor, the court date was yesterday, but in the meantime I started giving him stuff from my eBay type store that I have, and I gave him a ride to the store, and I'm just being very friendly. And again, when you mess up and you're a spirit worker, you have to do 10 times the amount of fixing. And so the fixing began a week before this court date, and I had this idea to go down and ask the judge to make his citation exempt and not mine. And the good news is that this happened. I went down and sat in court. This is real small stuff. This is like traffic ticket, yelling outside, very small local court, But I sat there for 2 hours, and I went on his date, right? And talked to the judge and the prosecutor, and I was able to get the thing thrown out. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is I went through all these hoops and went way out of my way and sacrificed a lot of time to make up for one thing that I did. And the first step in that was taking completely responsibility and total responsibility, even to the extent of acknowledging that someone had called the police for us arguing, and just asking him to show leniency for him was not seeing the full picture. And I also understand that there was a third party somewhere involved. And you have to do that. You have to realize that you're wrong and realize that you're really wrong. And your consciousness, and you will get, if you've been through initiation or going through initiation, you will have direct responses from your guides. Or if you're working with a shaman and you've already seen survival evidence, you do this type of stuff and it'll get stronger. One of the first things that happens when your consciousness is expanding due to this process that I talk about is you can tell there's a heightened level of something when you do a series of good deeds. And I noticed a pattern with 3 good deeds. That's why I always recommend it. And there's also a heightened sense of your, I'm just going to call it spirit energy, when a loved one passes. Like I've mentioned this before, where you can have like a prana enhancement when you're working out. There's all these ways that your guides will let you know that what you're doing is excellent. It's working towards contributing something unique to the logos in relation to a unique experience of service to others. You can see that. I mean, like, once you really start traveling on this path, so the easiest way to get this going is hospice work or soup kitchen work, that type of volunteer work. You don't want to get too into a situation where you're, let's say like you're getting really into, you're traveling to like El Salvador, and then you develop that problem where it's almost like an addiction, going to extreme locations to do volunteer work. A lot of times these people like that will suffer from a psychological disorder where they have trouble differentiating between if what they're doing actually has a purpose. And I'm not going to get into that, but like when I say volunteer work, keep it simple. There's an extreme complexity to hospice patients, and a lot of the times they don't want to reveal their weakness to their family members. And even though they have family all around them, sometimes they don't at all. But even the ones that have family, a lot of times feel alone in the way that only someone in that situation could understand. And that's where, a spirit worker can come in. And this is what the grid workers, people who are reestablishing, have the ability, once an event happens, they can do it right now, but once a particular event happens that I talk about all the time, I'm very vague about it, it's called Proof of the Soul, Global Proof of the Soul. This is just what you do in your spare time. You got to get used to it. You got to get used to doing volunteer work. And back to what I was saying about how I made up for this citation for disrupting or disorderly conduct, for getting in an argument with my neighbor. I immediately took action as a spiritual worker. That's my responsibility to fix that. And I did it, and I feel great.
everything feels good.